All right. Shout out to SKC for this particular stream. This was a last minute request from SKC on today. Um, Boy, you had to be over at his stream to understand what was going on. But shout out to him. He did an excellent stream today, and so we'll kind of carry over some stuff over from him. Laughing dog. I don't know who Kane Howard is, but hey, salute to him. All right, so first and foremost, thanks for tuning in. Glad you guys and ladies are doing all right this evening or this morning, depending on where you are in the world. Definitely want to give everybody a shout out. Thanks for listening in. Thanks for tuning in. We truly appreciate the love and support. Just one moment. All right, I was getting some feedback. Got that out of the way. Konnichiwa, Laughing Dog, or in this case, because it's evening, Kunbanwa. So, good to see you. Okay, so again, shout out to SKC. He had requested this stream. He is a very good friend of mine and fellow Ronin. So, um, he requested this from his stream from earlier. So I was like, hey, why not? This is something in my wheelhouse that I could kind of go over. Plus, I'm gonna add some other um, talking points from it. So, what kind of sparked this? For those who don't know, SKC, which stands for Supreme King Kun, he had a stream earlier today where uh, it started off on one topic and then it just snowballed into so many topics and all. It was unheard of. Um, Kind of going into some conspiracy theories, kind of battling with philosophies and all, which, you know, I like those type of talks. You actually get more done than going in circles on other aspects that is completely unnecessary. Hint, hint, Black America. But hey, it is what it is. So during the discussion over on the stream, SKC had asked if I could talk a bit about triangulation. And I said, sure, why not? And while I had that kind of like a topic I was going to do today, or tonight, excuse me, there were some other topics that came up where I was just like, yeah, probably want to talk a little bit on those subjects as well. And so, for those of you who are interested in the arts of math and science, you'll probably enjoy this stream. But let me just give a fair warning, because this was brought to my attention on SKC stream. So, for those who don't know, I am a certified mathematician, or a degreed mathematician, excuse me. Went to school, went to university, got my degree, Bachelor's of Science, Mathematics. Nobody would think much wrong about it, right? But it was brought to my attention on SKC's panel that the mathematics I was taught in school is considered the Jesuit mathematics. Now, that's going on the deep end of whatever this Jesuit mathematic is, but just to just to make sure, some folks who may be offended by the type of, I don't know, standard mathematics I'm going to be using, I guess I'll just give a fair warning. If you're the type who don't like math or science, or you're the type that don't like, I guess, this new standard of math that's called Jesuit math, that is, you know, the standard math that's used all over the world. You can pick a country and everybody's using that standard mathematical system. But I guess this is a math that was placed in by the elites. And so all the mathematical learning and training I've gone through is because the elites has set the standards. Therefore, I have been programmed to only understand Jesuit math. So Laughing Dog, it was an interesting segment on that part. So I had to mute myself and laugh a lot and everything. So I'll just leave that over to SKC Stream. So in any case, if you're one who don't like that type of mathematics, by all means, don't listen to the stream. In fact, I just highly recommend you just turn the stream off, turn off your social media and everything, and just go live your life. Just go live your life. Okay. It is not that type of seriousness, but hey, who am I? Laughing Dog says, I've always been a 2+4 guy, because my brain works. Hey, I thought I was too, but I guess I've been going about it wrong, Laughing Dog. Mikish says, listening, not aware of this kind of math. Hey, Mikish, I'm just only going off of the math that I've been taught at the highest level of education, which is university, at least the American educational system. So I'm just going based off of that. But I've been told that I have only been learning the Jesuit type of math. I don't know what that is, but oh well. So in any case, for those who do know, shout out to Isaac Sama, good to see you, sir. For those who do know that type of mathematics, I mean, if that's something you just don't like, by all means, don't listen to the stream. Turn the social media off or anything in regards to it, unsubscribe, whatever. Just go live your life. Just saying. So, with that said, I have given a fair warning. So, anything beyond this point, if you don't agree, well, I just kindly ask you just keep the comments to yourself. And this is mainly for certain comments. Everybody's free to talk here, but certain comments, I'm just like, yeah, let's just keep that over in the rabbit hole or whatever that came out of. Okay, so now let's get into the meat. What's good, JJ? Good to see you, sir. All right, so SKC, the Supreme King Kun, asked me if I could talk a little bit about triangulation. That's definitely something that I know very much about. So let me go ahead and start off with what we're going to learn today. There's actually many different subjects in triangulation when it comes to mathematics, but SKC wanted me to cover a particular type of triangulation that deals with how to deal with distance and surveying locations, which no problem. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. So this is an article from, well, not article, but pretty much a segment from theconstructor.org. Good type of subject if you want to go into types of construction, building, and everything. So they got a very good in-depth article about triangulation survey. So let's get right into it. So the first question is asked is, what is triangulation surveying? It says triangulation surveying is the tracing and measurements of a series or network of triangles to determine distances and relative positions of points spread over an area. By measuring the length of one side of each triangle and deducing its angles and length of other two sides by observation from this baseline. Triangulation surveying was first introduced by a Dutch man named Snelling. And here you can see it gives an example of what triangulation surveying looks like in the picture. Next it says, triangulation is preferred for hills and undulating areas. In other words, uneven areas, since it is easy to establish stations as reasonable distance apart with intervisibility. In plain and crowded areas, it's not suitable as the intervisibility of stations is affected. The difficulty is overcome by building towers, which is quite expensive. The main disadvantage of triangulation is the accumulation of error in the lengths and directions of lines, since both of them, for successive lines, depend upon the computations for those of the preceding line, which necessitates the check basis. In triangulation, entire area to be surveyed is covered with a framework of triangles. For the triangle, the length of the first line, which is measured precisely, is known as the baseline. The other two computed sides are used as new baselines for two other triangles interconnected with the first triangle. By extending this process, a chain or network of triangles can be spread over the entire area. So, we get to the section of what operations that use triangulation survey. It says the field work of a triangulation is carried out in the following well-defined operations. There's reconnaissance, station preparation, baseline measurement, and measurement of angles. Besides fieldwork, triangulation consists of the specifications, the design of stations and signals, and the reduction and adjustment of observations. Laughing Dog says carpenters use a formula on the regular to check work. Exactly. Applications of triangulation surveying. Well, it does three things. Number one, establishing accurately located control points for plane and geodetic surveys of large areas. Number two, establishing accurately located control points in connection with aerial survey. And then last but not least, number three, accurate location of engineering projects such as center lines, terminal points, and shafts for long tunnels. And then center lines and abutments for long span bridges. Then there's also what's called triangulation systems. A system consisting of triangulation stations connected by a chain of triangles. The complete fig is called triangulation system or triangulation figure. The most common type of figures used in triangulation systems are triangles, quadrilaterals, and polygons. Geometric conditions to be fulfilled by above figures in triangulation systems are 1. The sum of interior angles should be 2n minus 4, and that sum times 90 degrees, where n is the number of sides on the figure. Number 2, if all the angles are measured at a station, their sum should equal 360 degrees. And then number 3, the line calculated through more than one route should agree. Hold on a second. Okay, I don't know why I did that, but okay. So let's go ahead. I'm not going to spend too long on this article, but here's a perfect example of a triangulation through chains. And this is just based on triangles. You have your baseline, which is the most common line that is used. And then you can make measurements just based off of these angles. Okay, that was strange, but we'll go ahead and continue on. Okay, so there's that article, and let me do this. So there's that article. If any of you guys want to know more about triangulation, by all means, there is the proof. Now, let's kind of look at it in practice. So I do have another site that actually has a calculator. Okay, SKC, good to see you, sir. I did send you the link to tonight's stream, so whenever you're ready, feel free to hop on. I know you have a lot of questions based off of what you went through earlier today, so I can definitely answer them the best I can. So whenever you're ready, but I'll definitely continue on. Okay. Yes. So let me pull up this other site with the calculator. All right, here we go. Okay. So this calculator pretty much helps with triangulations to calculate distance between objects. And so they just use a simple diagram where this person here off to the far left, that's supposed to be yourself or someone who is first person. And then these trees are just listed as objects, which could be any type of object you want. But we're just focusing on how to calculate distances. So let's just crunch some numbers. So we want to find what is the distance between objects A and objects B. So we're really looking at the distance here on line C. So let's just do some numbers. The first thing it is going to ask, well, let me do this first. The formula we're going to use is the Pythagorean theorem, which is here below. This calculation shows C, which is the object we're looking for, equals the division of a to the power of 2 plus b to the power of 2 minus 2 times a times b times the cosine of y being the angle. And once you do all that underneath the division, then you'll be able to know what is your distance. So let's go ahead and just put some random numbers here. So right now we want to put in the distance of the first object, line A. So from yourself to the first object, that's line A. So we'll just start off with some small numbers here. We'll just say that distance is 2 feet. Next, it wants to put in the distance from yourself to the second object. Second object will be this object here to the far right. So we want to calculate the distance from ourselves to object B. or the second object. For this one, we'll just use another easy number. We'll just say 4. And then next, it wants us to look at the angle between both objects. So from myself, between object A and object B, there should be an angle. So for the time being, we'll just use a pretty small number. We'll just say 45. Now, keep in mind, the Pythagorean theorem, because it's using cosine, it's only suitable if your angle is 90 degrees or less. If that angle becomes more than 90 degrees, then it's not going to work with the formula. Now, there's other formulas that can help with that if you have angles that's more than 90 degrees. But in this case, for the Pythagorean theorem, we're using cosine. So the angles has to be at 90 degrees, but less than that. No more than 90. So we're just going with an easy number. Just take 90 degrees, divided by 2, you get 45. Okay, so we have our numbers. Now let's calculate. Going to calculate. As you can see, the number is now 2.95. Some can round it up and say it's roughly around 3 if you want to round it up that way. But for more accurate numbers, we want to use decimals. So in this case, the accuracy is 2.95. Not bad. Not bad. So you could take the formula, plug in those same numbers for A, B, and Y, and you'll get the same distance for C, which is the distance between the two objects is 2.95. So there you have it. Okay, so that's that. And when SKC comes back up, we can definitely review more of the triangulation, how to measure distances of objects, even moving objects at that. Excuse me. In fact, one of my favorite video games I like to play, World of Warships, it uses triangulation so much. Freeman's Journal. I know, after what we experienced today, I don't even know if the math I'm supposed to be using is the right one. But but there you go. There you go. That's how you use triangulation. Like I said, when SKC comes through, we can definitely go more in depth into it. But basically, that's what it's used for. Being able to measure distance based off of triangles. So, yeah, SKC. Yeah. JJ says, so people thinking this type of math is fake or false. JJ, all I can tell you is this. Supposedly, the standard mathematical system that is used by every single nation and every single continent you can think of, supposedly that math comes from some elitist group that is out to control the entire world. Don't ask me. I don't know who this group is, but supposedly all this stuff about the mathematical system comes from them. So I'll let your imagination run wild. Ah, boy. That's too funny. Too funny. Okay, so now there's another subject that also mathematics, And I think it's something that'll be a little bit more interactive with everybody here, where it actually proves that, yes, even. Oh, and there he is. There he is. Hold on a second. Mr. SKC. In fact, hold on a second. I gotta play your intro here. Let me just get that real quick. I know Jason's here, but I gotta play his intro. All right, definitely have fun with that. SKC, how you doing this evening, sir?
Oh wow! I forgot that you had made that, man.
Yeah, that's your official Black Ronines intro. So whenever you come through the stream, I just play that.
Oh man, oh man. I I don't know why, but well, I do know why I was doing all the other work behind the scenes and just having a blast hearing different people and their thought patterns. But I had a stream yesterday, and people got into an argument while I was away, and I listened to different portions of it, and it made me just question, what do people really believe? So today, oh man, I had a full day, but wow, I would have
Yeah.
had no idea that well, I just put it this way: very interesting concepts to consider. And over the years, I've learned how to be a bit more judicious in my approach to various concepts,
Mm.
and, and I've been able to try to take a more understanding view, so that in the future, if I'm confronted with certain information, I'll be able to explain it better, why I agree or disagree. So um, today was very eye opening to a variety of interesting concepts. Um, some I found eye opening. Others I found shocking. Um, some I found that were, fair. I'm like, oh, okay, that's an interesting way to think about that. I never imagined that before, but
Right.
we'll go from there. And then others I did find comical. Um, I you know, I do it for you, Freed. I do it for you. uh, I think one of the most entertaining um concepts that I heard today was and it's no hate to the person, no hate. I
Oh no.
just, but the longevity of Ireland reign and its longevity reaching back to the time of Pharaoh, circa 4000 BCE. So I'm like, what? I don't even know how to fully wrap my mind around that one, because I was willing to give a concession to say, okay, you know what? By classic history, 4, 5. BCE. I mean, AD,
Mm.
fourth or fifth century Ireland. Okay. Um, then I bent over backwards and I was like, okay, I'll even give you second century.
Right.
That's a long stretch. I'm giving an extra somewhere between 200 to 300 years. And then it was like, no, give me 4,000 more. I'm like, whoa, whoa,
Right.
whoa,
Right.
no. It could not have existed before Rome, Greece, Persia, Assyria, Babylon. I'm like, come on, how much of a. And then to the trade routes between Egypt and Ireland circa year 4000 before the Roman road system. Yeah, that was shocking to me. I can't. I don't think that I can truly come up with the words to fully. Um, yeah, that I I can't wrap my mind around that one. Uh Good grief. I mean, and I know this is your show. I don't want to take up too much time.
Oh, oh no. Honestly, this is all stemming from your stream. Like there was so many digging in like so many holes. I didn't even know where to even where to even go. Like I know you asked a question about the triangulation and how to do measurements by triangles and all. So I was going to do a stream to just start off with that. But then I got caught up in so many other subjects that it's like, okay, I definitely gonna have to talk a little bit about some of these other subjects. Like, for example, you asked in your stream, can light speed be measured? And unanimously, except for myself and yourself as well, everybody said no. And I was just like, gracious. Are we really trying to go into tribalism here? Yeah. So that's where it's like I was like, okay, I gotta talk about some few items and all. In fact, before you came on, I was just about to get into this article that shout out to the same person who talked about the connection between the ancient Irish and Egypt. They did bring up something about a theorem, which, to be quite honest, actually kind of makes my argument even more so the fact that math can be utilized to make things more stable. No is not the answer for everything. No mathematician or even a scientist in their right mind will tell you that math and science is the answer to everything. Because there's some
Right.
things that we simply can't explain. Fair enough. But to say that the ancients had more knowledge and understanding than the modern technology, that's where I'm kind of like, okay, can you give me some evidence of that? And unfortunately, when I asked for the evidence, it was more so, well, you just got to look at their interpretation. And I'm just like, well, that's tough because sure, they may have wrote something down, but I can still interpret that information differently uh, uh compared to the next person. And that's what I was trying to get at, but you know,
Yeah,
emotional attachment.
yeah, there's a lot of there's a lot of strong viewpoints on a variety of subject matter. Uh, I, okay, the man, I don't even know where to start. Okay, so I was, and I don't want to come off as as being like I'm laughing at anybody. I'm not laughing. I was really trying to absorb as much information as possible to get a better viewpoint as to why people believe what they believe. Um, so there has to be um, some decorum in those discussions. Um, man, okay, the flat Earth thing, the flat Earth thing. I think that's what kind of was the
That was definitely the most driving topic of the whole stream.
yeah, yeah. Um, what I found, eh, well, one thing I wanted to get with you about on that the flat
Mm,
Earth map with the I guess the ice wall around the map and the with Greenland being the center of the map. Um, with that layout, and if that is as presented an accurate representation of planet Earth and all of the land masses, that dramatically changes military deployments, how wars are fought,
right.
movements. I mean, um, i- literally, when you look at it, Japan would have gone away from the United States
Hmm.
in order to attack, instead of just making a beeline for Alaska, which on that map is closest to um, Japan. So it just it a lot of it didn't seem right. I'm looking at it just from a strategic point of view, and I'm like, um, that would have went down in history as a blunder. Why in the
Right.
world are you traveling 900 miles out of the out away from the mainland of the country that you're trying to attack? For what? What purpose would that serve at all? If that map is accurate, that it just it's mind-boggling to say that any of that makes sense. And I don't know, maybe that's why I was asking, hey, I'm not as adept at being a World War II and World War One a historian. I know a little bit more than the average bear, but
Right.
maybe someone else that has looked into this and peered into this on a regular basis can, correct me and say, hey, no, SKC, you're wrong. Let me take a look at this. And no, they probably would have done it this way and such and such. And I'm willing to listen to that. But when I when I presented those questions, I didn't get any satisfying answers to those questions. So I guess that's where I started, and I was hoping to get some input from you.
Yeah, and SKC, I answered based off of my interpretation of that map, and I'm just like, yeah, it really would be a waste of time as far as military deployment. And yes, Eisen, I'm going back to that book review we just did earlier this year, but I, I looked at the map and I said, yeah, it would be a complete waste of time to do all of these military deployments, especially if you take into account, you know, World War II, the technology back then was still catching on. It wasn't as robust and sound as it is now, which I'm still, one thing that kind of came to mind is if we're saying that a particular group of elitists somehow controls all of the information and technology as we speak, then apparently, I mean, unless you come up with a stronger system, I mean, you have no choice but to but to bend the knee, I guess, because who's going to overtake them?
Yeah, one thing that I think that people fail to realize is the power of truth.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying that in like just a religious or a philosophical way. I'm saying just actual basic truth. So let's say if someone is practicing some faulty math that
Hmm.
it really doesn't work. You've convinced some people to believe you or whatever. However, there are other places on the planet that they have minds as well. They have mathematicians as well. As soon as they find out that that is not the case, they're going to use that as for military gain. These people actually
Right.
believe that this math is actually correct and it's not. We're gonna destroy them
Right.
because what they're doing is absolutely incorrect. It will not work. This will not work in a submarine. This will not work in a plane. This will not work in a tank. They're using improper calculations. They would have. It's you will not survive that way.
SKC, I'll put it like this. If the math that has been used, well, one thing you brought up that they didn't have an answer for, how can you possibly say that the math that we learned today and the educational system is only coming from a particular group of people when you've had many instances where people who did not have means of contacting each other, from different parts of the globe, came up with the same mathematical system.
Right.
That's where
Yeah.
I was like, are you seriously telling me that even with these people who did not have any source of contact with each other, are you seriously telling me that their mathematical system was still because of some elitist group that somehow just knew how to come up with this whole system all by themselves without any sort of prior knowledge and so to speak, they just knew everything before human civilization was created?
Yeah, see that was the weird point because you take for instance like um the Romans
Mm-hmm.
with their Roman numeral system. They were doing math and using various calculations before getting before I guess the time of understanding the concept of a zero.
Right.
So the math that they were using, it was correct in that they were able to build all sorts of great I mean, just great things. I mean, just simple things like the roads, the some of the coliseums, the arcs, and all these things. But yet, in a totally different place, it's like you had the Arabs and also in India, and they were using mathematical formulas as well.
Right. And
So
they didn't have a direct line to like the British and the English and all or any other civilization that had, maybe a little bit more advanced. They did not have that connection, but they still came up with a similar system.
yeah, and then of course you travel over to the east. You had individuals that were doing very deep and complex calculations with an abacus. So I
Right.
mean, it's like it, the they can all in their individual ways come up with the same answer. So you can't say that there was like a cabal of special people that got everybody on the same system. It's like no, they figured the same things out in different ways, in different languages.
Hmm. Yeah, man. Free said it best. It was kind of like being at one of those cookouts where you have some relatives that we all know have kind of gone too far off the deep end, and they're trying to explain some things to you that, for the most part, 90% of other folks actually knows, but the 10% is just some out of this world type of euphoria where yeah, yeah. It kind of reminds me of those situations where it's like, yeah, okay, I'm just going to sit back, let these guys say what they got to say and all, and then, when it's time for me to go, it's time for me to go. But yeah, I mean, it's too much evidence against the contrary. And yes, people. Oh, go right ahead.
No, I was thinking in addition to all of that, um, there's a lot more complexity and nuance to a variety of situations. They're not just as simple and plain as laid out.
Mm.
Um, you think about uh, trade routes between various nations. Um, particularly when it came to military might and keeping control. Um, there were often times where people that were trading with each other, particularly when it came to like precious metals or something like that, they would
Mm.
make deals with with their source to be like, "Hey, don't sell to such and such. Those are our enemies. If you sell to them, we will attack because we will see you as financing our enemy."
Yep.
So there wouldn't just little tiny details like that of understanding the times and the people who were in charge in various nations and how they interacted with one another, um, gives another story of, well, no, these people, they traded with everybody, and they no that especially during those times, that really wasn't possible because
Mm-mm.
it's a very short tale of in the days of Israel, um the king of Tyre um was instructed not to give timber to Assyria, and the reason why is because Israel was one of its main buyers of that timber.
Right.
Israel did not want Assyria to have access to that, because it's like, oh crap, now they're going to be able to build all sorts of spears and arrows and stuff. So it just doesn't, those type of things doesn't make sense, and I don't know it.
And
I don't know.
and here's my thing, SKC. So yes, I get to I understand when they were trying to say question everything. Right. I get it. I understand the reasoning behind it. You know, not everything you come across on the news, online, social media, and everything is true. I get that. So you got to be more cautious. But then when I asked them, okay, can you show me or show some of us what is what is the information you have that is the alternative to what we know? And unfortunately, this is just my interpretation. The somewhat information they provided, you can easily go on Google to find it. So, how would your information not be something that's already being controlled by the so-called elitists?
That's an excellent question. An observation. Um, when you said that, it made me think of another concept that came across the desk this morning, or rather this afternoon.
Mm.
The possibility of George Washington being black. So I recall, I think this was, I think that was like during a junior year in high school.
Mm.
Um, we had to go over a lot of the letters and correspondence that happened between Washington and the King of England,
Mm-hmm.
and the respect that they had for one another. Um, okay, England had not too long before that, not before that, but they were involved in, obviously, in the slave trade,
Mm-hmm.
and Washington wasn't owned his own slaves.
Yes, sir.
So, in order for that to be a reality, the King of England would have been corresponding regularly with
Mm-hmm.
a black man who owned slaves in America, who is talking about forming their own country. Like it.
Yeah, yeah, I'm thinking the same thing too. Cause I even heard, you probably will be laughing about this. I've even heard that World War II was started because of Daggles.
Yeah, I heard some craziness like that as well. That's absurd, and if I'm not mistaken, I heard that from within the quote unquote SYSBM camp, and
Mm-hmm.
I quickly had to be like, "Oh, whoa, distance," because
Yeah, same
it's
with me.
like, yeah, that is so far fetched. I mean, that's like, man, that ranges into the realm of you tell me. I can't even wrap my mind around that either. I'm like,
It goes down that same slippery slope where you're saying a small group of people have that much influence to change the entire outcome of world history. And don't get me wrong, don't, especially like today's modern time. Yes, there are, some groups of people who have good influence across the board and everything, but to literally rewrite history, and that's one thing I wanted to kind of point out. I didn't get a chance to kind of like respond to your response, SKC, in regards of um, history being written by the victors. I actually wanted to modify that and say that is definitely somewhat true, but that's where people who aren't even the victors still have a chance to contribute to history, because if you have Group A that talks about Event A, but Group B talks about Group A, or Event A, excuse me, then Event A has to be historically true, because you have multiple groups who's talking about the same event. Even though they may have opinions about that event, the accuracy of what happened during that event is consistent across the whole board. And I
Yeah.
think that got overlooked by, our contrarians.
Yeah, I think a pretty interesting I would say take for instance World War II, right?
Hmm.
We know the majority the um how do you put it, the lion's share of the fighting really took place in the East.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
the European theater.
mhm. Um, However, if we go to, let's say, places like South America, although not in the midst of much of the fighting, not to the levels that occurred in the East,
Mm.
they too were affected.
Yeah.
Um, Trade routes, commerce, uh, travel, their allies, so when you read from them of different things that occurred, that their journals, their information becomes corroborating evidences to different things that people write about or say or put in the annals of history. Because it would be it would be like someone saying, um, and the some of the German Nazi people, they escaped to South America and they started families there and such, and then we get to these South American countries and they say, yeah, when these people came over here, we slaughtered them because we knew what they were involved in during the war. We turned them over to these particular countries and such. What what it's like, if they didn't have a dog in the fight, why would they lie about that?
Right.
So it's things like that that when we look at um, other nations and tribes and people that were around in the same area, and if they had even if it wasn't direct information about something, they may have there may be certain clues as to what was going on, or things that could corroborate or give underlying evidence to other events that took place. Let's say in ancient Egypt, there was a war between uh, Egypt and the Nubians, and
Mm.
nevertheless, there were some people that were um, west of the Nubians, this small tribe that typically would trade with them, and but they noted that during this particular period of time they did not trade with the Nubians. And they say, well, why? Well, they just said they didn't have the supplies. Well, that would make sense if Nubia was at war with Egypt at the time,
Right.
because during a war they would say, no, we can't trade anything, we got to use all of our resources in order to furnish this war. Those type of things make sense, and I think people overlook that because they really haven't checked how anthropologists, archaeologists, historians come up with certain things when they write these histories, because they really don't look into the reference material of why they came what they're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to bring this up from Oh He Died, because I asked him to kind of share his thoughts and everything. He says, so what we mean by a group that controls from the shadow, we mean a group of people that each controls more secretly, like a person who owns a bank that many profit streams flow through. Okay, that's something I can believe in because you don't have to directly have control or influence. You can somewhat have, you know, small little groups of sectors to do things for you and everything. I get that. I get that. But my only issue is okay, if you're saying that the programming from these groups of people is so powerful that the whole world pretty much, you could probably say from cradle to grave, follow suits in this system, then what kind of alternative do they have in order to leverage themselves against that? And the people who were, trying to talk from that side, they couldn't give a concrete answer of, sure, you just do this or do that. Or when they do give some sort of concrete answer, unfortunately, it's still tied into the same system that they're against. So it was just a lot of circles where it's like, okay, well, you're saying this group is so powerful, but you are leveraging against them the same system that they control.
Yeah, yeah. It's yeah. I like I said, I would like to understand a stronger argument on on that end, and perhaps there is one. I don't
Yeah,
know, and I'm willing to listen to it. But it's as where I'm at right now. Um, I think at the end of that discussion, I was pretty much kind of stating, hey, um, albeit a bit sarcastically, but I was stating here, if that is the case, as is described, then all is lost.
right.
It doesn't make any sense to fight against it because sharing antiquated information about old times is not going to translate into any type of workable technology to win anything.
And not only that, SKC, as gentlemen who have went through the educational system, especially one of the best educational systems in a country like America, the thing I have to ask them is, how can you convince not only, you know, smart people here, but even smart people from all over the world that the system that they are living, working, socializing in is all controlled by one group of people? And how can you convince them they need to break away from that system? That's where it's just like, look, I know you're entitled to your opinions. Everybody's entitled to their opinions. But when you make an assertion that, so to speak, we are programmed into thinking a certain way, well, my thing is good luck trying to convince other people who may not come from the same background as us, but they too have been programmed with similar systems. Good luck telling them that they've had it wrong for millennium. Not centuries, not decades, millennium.
Yeah, that's a tough pill to swallow, and I don't know. I think it's one of those things that because I hear sometimes people will have the conversation about the quote unquote small hats, as it were,
Mm-hmm.
and my my neighbor is a quote unquote small hat. I go jogging with him when I can, and it's I just it's hard to hold to a belief that a group of people, how can I put this?
Why you think
Okay,
of?
basically you're saying you're making an
Mm,
argument that those people are smarter than everybody else on the planet. Period.
yeah, that's really their argument. Yeah, that's really their argument. And oh, he died. I like what you say. Most people won't believe. That's why we hope that there would be an undeniable event that will show this. Oh, he died. I am all for it. If there's a, hopefully it's not a big catastrophic event where some lives are hurt or killed. Definitely don't wish for that. But I definitely would like to see some sort of undeniable event that for those on that end can say, hey, this is what I'm talking about. It is concrete, is foolproof. There's no indisputable contrarian thoughts to it. This is what it is. If they can show me that type of evidence, I am all for it. I am open minded. I will literally say, hey, these guys are onto something. I'm with it. But again, that's where the burden of proof is on them to try to shame people. And they try to say we're using shaming language, and we're not even shaming, we're just trying to be open-minded to where, can you help us connect the dots? Because I have one dot that's over here, say in California. I have another dot that's over here in England. Meanwhile, you just pointed me to another dot that's over here in South America. Like, how did they connect?
Yeah, yourself as a trained mathematician, I'm pretty sure that uh, y- you completely understand the difference between applied mathematics and theoretical mathematics.
Oh yeah.
Um, you could see the practical value of you walking out of the classroom, understanding how to apply mathematics in the real world in order to accomplish whatever the goal is. I mean, it could go anywhere from something being engineered to how the turbine engine in some ship works, to going into the field of medicine and understanding uh, the mathematics behind a surgical procedure. It's but going into information that it doesn't have a practical value set.
Mm.
Um, I just I'm at I'm at my wits end trying to understand why such information would be of value. It even if I wanted to go into more of the I would say, as people would call it, esoteric, but Kitagakade Jones and myself would say um, more of the religious mindset or mode of thinking. There
Right.
are practical things that guide you in how you interact with other people to have a better outcome in life and to um, have more self fulfillment. I I'm not understanding how this information, how does it assist you? I could see, like, I could really see if somebody said, okay, you know what, flat earth, you know what? Let me show you this, and you can go out into the real world right here, and it will show you how to get around this planet quicker. I'll be like,
Mm-hmm.
oh crap.
Right.
Holy, it's like, okay, yeah, they're saying you on this map here, but do this on this map and watch. You're gonna get there like 35 minutes earlier because they're taking you around and blah blah blah. Holy crap! But if it's not giving any practical value, like what in the world? What does this add to life?
SKC, like one of our interlocutors made the statement that to prove the earth is flat, that you should be able to see other objects. I think he said from a distance of 18 miles from either direction. And somehow, no matter what direction you look at, you should be able to see those objects. Okay, well, let's take this to consideration. Um, what was what was a really big event? I would say that's okay. Let's kind of go back to the flat Earth and World War II, the Manhattan Project, and they were testing out the atomic bomb out in New Mexico. Based on that prior information, people from LA and New York should have been able to see a mushroom cloud no matter what distance. And in fact, to make it even more of an argument, people from all the way from Hawaii should be able to look up into the atmosphere, see a mushroom cloud, say, oh wow, that's a weird looking cloud. Where did that come from? But
Yeah, I mean,
obviously,
think about volcanoes.
right. Volcanoes, hurricanes, tornadoes, and all. We should be able to see these type of phenomenons from any direction, miles away. But also, it shows that okay, first off, the distance formulation simply don't work because even if you was to say the Earth is flat, you can't see all objects within 18 miles radius. I mean, humans don't have that type of foresight to do so. But even with the best of equipment, even with today's technology you could create of, you still won't be able to see some other object 18 miles away. That is pretty far distance unless you climb into the atmosphere or an altitude.
Yeah, I don't know. That's what I was saying. With those situations, um, and I'm not saying in the situation of the person, but I'm just saying in general. With those things, there needs to be a slow and deliberate walkthrough, because if
Right.
not, it comes off as snake oil ish, like, or used car salesman type of lingo. Oh man, it's this, and what you need. Oh, I'll hook you up, and it's like, no, 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 no. Slow this down. This is something very serious. So show me the math, walk me through it. It's not an insult or anything. I'm just saying,
Hmm.
if this is true information, this is something that should be easily reproduced
Mhm.
over and over and over again.
Right. SKC, you've heard the old saying the best educators are ones who can take any subject and make it learnable through all walks of life. No matter if it's a little child, no matter if it's an elderly person, you can take whatever information that you know of and be able to break it down to the intellect level of those individuals. That, to me, that's the same concept of, okay, like even with the people that I interview, or me and Shinobi Bro interview on the Black Rodents, one thing we notice is the individuals when they get into martial arts and everything, they talk about how their instructors, before they even get to the advanced stuff, they spend weeks or sometimes even months just going over the basic fundamentals of whatever type of martial arts they're learning, because they want to teach the foundation of, this is why you will do this, or this is why you would do that, so that when you get to the more advanced stuff, you're already prepared mentally, physically, and psychologically. But when you bring a subject and you just go completely into the advancement, and don't take the time to break down the fundamentals, if they even exist, I'm sorry. Most people will just simply be like, I just don't get it. Like, I'm trying to understand, but my brain is not comprehending why you are teaching it this way.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I, I was looking up information about how the ancients calculated um, distances, particularly between the sun and the moon, and I would think that these things would be part of the conversation because in a lot of these back and forths, the ancients are brought up as almost like the gold standard.
Mm-hmm.
There's a particular guy, and I hope I'm not destroying the pronunciation of his name, Aristarchus of Samos,
Yep.
um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that was what 200 or 300 years um, BC. Before, well, I'll just say before Christ, 200 or 300 years before then. Um, so the calculations were there, um, and then you go through that exercise and you see, okay, how did he do it? You read the little small kid's tale of how he got it done, and you go through the math of um, how he figured out the angle between the sun and the moon by using solar eclipses.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense. This is stuff 2000 plus years ago.
Yep.
So if that can be done and we can understand that, why are we having these conversations about the it, I just I don't know.
SKC, I'm in the same boat with you. Like, believe me, like I said before, I am open for all new information. Anything that I have learned from the past, but can be scientifically proven now, that, you know what, that's an old way of thinking. Here's the new way of thinking, and this is the verifiable facts that this new thinking is more current. I am all open for it. I'm one that will tell anybody. Well, Ronald Reagan said it best: trust but verify. If it's
Yeah.
verified, then you know what, it you just have to go with it because that's the truth. But I think this is where technology has kind of been like a double-edged sword, because we have now opened the floodgates to where resources and events can be interpret it in many different ways, and you will have people who will believe those interpretations, whether it's truthful or not. And again, people are entitled to their opinions. There is nothing wrong with opinions. But if you're going to state something that is true or false, then you need to have solid, verifiable evidence to back up, your claim. There's there's a thing that we've been taught in math, which is something that was taught to us from early age, and it's true or false statements. And if something is true, then the math should be able to verify as true. And if it's false, the math should be able to verify as false. And
Mm.
again, later on, probably on another stream, there is a theorem there is a theorem that talks about incompleteness, which does says that not everything can be verified by math, which is true.
Mm.
But again, the key thing that's missed is it's a theorem. So it's not something that is based on 100% truth, but it's a theorem to say that yes, we have some evidence that this happens on some occasion, not every time, but some occasion. And it's kind of like the same thing with uh, uh, one of the other talking points today, the belief in gravity. Now, again, yes, there is the theory of gravity, okay? But I will tell anybody, if you want to prove if gravity is true, just go to the tallest building in your vicinity and just see if you can levitate when you walk off the building. If you're levitating, walking off the building, then hey, there's no such thing as gravity. And you have verifiable proof that that's that. But 99% of people on earth, even the ones who, may not may not be thinking too straight, but they can tell you there is such thing as gravity.
Uh, it's uh, I don't know. I don't know where that concept comes from, or why. Wow. Huh. Okay, it's okay without trying to solve for gravity. There are so many things that don't work.
Hmm.
You don't put satellites in the orbit of the planet if you don't understand gravity.
Right.
Um, for what it's worth, people saying all the stuff about um, take for instance this the flat Earth thing. The $300 to $1,200 item that you're carrying around in your pocket that you use typically every day, that in itself works
Uh-huh.
because of a circular spherical earth.
Right.
It's designed specifically for it. So I was like, what?
I
I
mean,
mean,
if there's no such thing as gravity, like when you have let's take for example tornadoes. Tornadoes are verified weather. I don't care what anybody says, is a natural phenomenon. The way tornadoes work, they, even though they are, scary phenomenon, and please, for anybody that's listening out there, definitely don't try to test this theory at all. But if gravity didn't exist, tornadoes should be one of those phenomenons where if you was to get caught up in a tornado, it should literally shoot you to outer space. Or, well, they say space doesn't exist. It should shoot you out of this planet. We'll just say that.
Yeah. Yeah, with the force that it has. Good grief.
Right.
I mean, good grief. The thing can there have been tornadoes, and I don't know if people understand the size of an aircraft carrier.
Mm-hmm.
But there have been some where aircraft carriers have stated, okay, it's best for us to avoid this.
Right.
So I'm like, it's like, I don't know, man. That's yeah, good mother. I didn't understand that until today. That the part of the flat Earth thing is that space doesn't exist. Yeah.
Yep. Space doesn't exist. Gravity doesn't exist. The moon that we see at night, that's just some hologram that somehow is just up there at night. It doesn't exist and everything. All the stars that we see at night, they're just stationary objects. They don't move and whatnot. Excuse me. All of that is tied to flat Earth.
Yeah, the one that I found quite interesting, and I would like to kind of see the how it works out so far as math, and other sciences. The distribution of light, all of those type of things. But instead of being 93 million miles away, the sun is about 3,000 miles away,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not as large as is postulated by astronomers. So, um, hmm, hmm, pictures of Mars and Uranus and Venus and Mercury, Saturn, Jupiter,
Yeah.
the understanding of the cosmos, the comets, various asteroid belts, seeing light from Alpha Centauri. I mean, it's
And you know something, SKC? I had an article, but I think I'll wait till another time to bring it up. But I had an article where one of Einstein's theories of relativity was just proven true,
oh
and it
really?
has, yeah, and it had to deal with black holes. There was a recent event that happened sometime last year where they were able to observe pretty much a star being absorbed by a black hole. And the way that this event phenomenon was happening, they were literally able to measure the gravitational pull of the black hole onto that planet. And
Mm,
it was happening at such a major event that they said that event itself, even though it's light years away, the event itself only lasted a minute. And they said based on the distance and how with black holes light can't get around it and everything, you can see the gravitational pull of the planet going into the black hole, which proves one of Einstein's theories of relativity that light has to bend when there's a gravitational pull.
mm, mm. Man, my wife was sitting here. She was reminding me of. She said, Eurysthenes and the radius of the Earth, or how he figured out the radius of the planet. It just different things like that. It's these are not people who um were part of the quote unquote cabal of, the 13, 14, 1500s. They lived ages before then,
Hmm.
some thousands of years before then. So I'm like, what? I mean, we marvel. There's all this talk of the marvel of the ancients, but we have a lot of their knowledge today
Right,
and have built upon it.
right. And to be honest with that, a lot of the stuff that's, yes, there's evidence that some ancient civilizations were starting to become more modern, but for the most part, they simply did not have the knowledge yet and technology to simply catch up to what we now know and understand, thanks in part, most of it through math and science.
Yeah, I just, yeah, yeah. Mm. I just, I don't. You know something? I think I may do like a series of these small um points like these, like
Hmm.
some of the ancients of old and what they figured out that people ask about today. It's almost like knowledge that's either forgotten um or some people believe that it hasn't been figured out by now. And these were some of the things that ancient people, they they inquired of the same things and did the hard work to figure it out. They
Right.
were less distracted than we were. So
Yeah.
and
Yeah. They.
and it's kind of sad because it doesn't take a lot for us to figure this stuff out because it's all at our fingertips.
Hmm.
But
I agree. It's like at this point, technology is such advance that to say that, and don't get me wrong, the ancient civilizations, they work with what they got, but to say that they were more advanced than we are now with how much accurate information we can get at our fingertips. Again, my thing is, if you can show me how much they knew back then that we haven't even covered yet, and it's verified, I'm all in. I'm all for it. But they're going based off of, well, according to such and such text or such and such information, which again, when you ask them, okay, how do you find that information? It's coming through sources that, let's just be honest, easily could be manipulated.
yeah, you know, the okay, certain topics such as um what we're talking about today, the I think it started off with the Atlantic slave trade, and um instead of going the route of focusing on the slaves and slavery and all of that,
Mm,
okay, let's X that completely out and let's focus in on something that we can all agree on, which is um transfer of goods from one continent to the other. One of the
Right.
main ones we knew at that time was sugar. Sugar was manufactured in South America and also some marshlands on the islands of the Caribbeans and a little bit in like the New Orleans and Mississippi area. So, uh, but by far South America.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we know for a fact that there was a huge transfer of sugar from South America to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So they knew how to make the trek with ships. So why, if we know that that trek happened over and over and over to the point to where it was tons and tons and tons of sugar that was introduced the into Europe to the point to
Mm-hmm.
where it became part of the culture. Sugar with tea.
Yeah. Yeah.
so, so, um, uh, how far fetched is it for us to understand that? Just replace the sugar with slaves.
uh, which I'm gonna say this and move on a little bit of it, but okay, there are there was an argument that was made that okay, where is the evidence of these slave ships? Okay, fine. If you want to say they can't find any, uh, um, they can't find any slave ships at the bottom of the sea and everything, these wooden ships and all. Okay, sure, but there are numerous evidence, both from Africa, South America, and even in America, where they had slave holding pens.
Hmm.
And SKC, you even showed it on one of your streams over in Africa, where to this day they still have some of the old artifacts and buildings where they were holding and auctioning off slaves. Excuse me. And all of this, all of those type of artifacts, you can find it in South America, you can find it in England, you can find it in America, almost every continent that touches the Atlantic, you can find that evidence of slave holding pens.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too that gets me about that conversation is that how how on what would make a ship a quote unquote slave ship?
Mm-hmm.
Would it have gold letters on the side of it that says slave? You know, I mean, I'm wondering because you know that let's say if there was a quote unquote slave ship or ship in general, if it were to pick up slaves and then send slaves to Africa to let's say the Caribbean or South America.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was one leg of the trip. The other
Right.
part of that trip was okay, now clean the galleys, fill that joker up with sugar and what and other spices, and then
Mm-hmm.
now you're going to Europe
Right.
for another leg of trip. So it's like it's not a thing of it's just this is only specifically for slaves. No, if it was a cargo ship, it could be used for slaves as well. What is the problem here?
Right. I to be okay. I'm not one, And SKC, you and I are both, we're like minded brothers. I'm not all into the whole slavery stuff and everything, and it was just some bad times, worse times, and everything. I'm not all into that,
No, no,
but
not either.
there are some historical facts that I'm sorry they can't be denied. As much as we don't use any emotional attachment to it, we could just reference it as if just passing time, or just reading a newspaper, but it's still historical fact. Every continent has historical information based on that same time frame.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know, man. It's one of those weird things. I wonder, like, okay, um, maybe the people on the I guess at the trading post of each country is like, oh no, I'm not gonna put my sugar, my spices on this one. It says slave on the side of it. It only this is only a slave passenger ship. You know,
or
we
you got the dock boss that's walking by, and he's like, wait a minute, do I smell
oh,
a
I smell
slave ship?
slave. Yeah, this. Yeah, like oh no, I can't put my rum on this in its barrel. No, no, we can't have that. I'm like, I'm like, do you what do you think that they did? Took slaves to the place and then went back with an empty vessel. We got to go start all over again. Like what?
just empty the whole ship. It's like, okay, you got to do another 2 weeks back to where you come from with nothing.
Yeah,
It's like, huh?
yeah. It's like no, they were. That's why it's called a manifest, so you can check what is on the boat.
Right?
I,
Um,
I
before we
just
continue, shout out to Miss Fox for the $10 donation on the Cash App. She said, "Thanks for keeping a quality channel. Thank you so much for enjoying the content and all. We do this for you all. SKC could tell you, like, we do have other lives outside of YouTube, but we enjoy making content like this to interact with folks.
yeah, yeah. It's fun. I think it's a good mental exercise. Um, a- and I don't mean this in a mean way. I'm really glad that a lot of those ideas came up because I would have never thought of some of these things, and
Right.
but it does kind of challenge me to think. There's a series. I don't know if you've ever seen it, Sigma Jones, but there's a. If I find it, I will. I'll email it to you. But I thought it was a
Mm.
really ingenious idea of this. Um, i- it's like a science. I think it's like a science show, and they give the person five different individuals um, at different levels in life. It could be a kid, then let's say a middle schooler, then a high schooler, then a college
Mm.
person, and then also an expert. And they have to explain the same concept in a way that all five of them can get it. And it's supposed to be a way of mastering how to teach something,
Mm.
regardless of the person's level of competency. And I don't know. I think this is one of those situations where um, something similar can be done because your audience is pretty wide ranging, and believe it or not, uh, regardless of where we can't learn and uh, assimilate all knowledge that has ever been faced on the planet. So
Oh
sometimes
no.
we're gonna come across things that we needed explained to us almost like we're at a childlike level because we're not there on this particular subject. So I think it's a good exercise that when you come across some of these topics, to be able to explain it from its elementary level all the way to or as closest to expertise as possible. So
Right. No, no, I definitely look forward to watching that and all because I myself I definitely sometimes I kind of have to take a step back. Like even today at work, um, I was kind of I work for a university, so we had some
mhm.
student workers that are kind of helping out my department, and I was tasked with teaching them far as what I expect them to do in a similar position with me. And I've always learned that there's certain aspects that yes, it's easy for me to know, but unless these student workers have come from a similar background as I have, they're not going to be able to know. So the focus I focus on with their training is okay, let's just go first with basic information. And then if they comprehend it, then we'll take small steps to the advanced step. But if they don't know it yet, then let's get back to those basics until they feel comfortable knowing what they need to know. And to me, that method, even for myself, learning it from school, that method has gone a long way because
Mm.
it focus you on okay, like you said, can you teach this subject to little kids? If you can't teach it to little kids, then forget trying to teach it to an adult. Because even though an adult may have longer attention span, they still may not comprehend the complexities of what you're trying to teach. And then especially if you throw in emotions and you be like, well, you should know this. You should be able to comprehend all this stuff, yada yada. You and I both know people easily shut down when you challenge their intellect in regards of learning new things or learning different subjects.
Yeah, it's it's rough. I, I don't know. To some degree, I kind of hope that people um, take the time out to um, just consider the possibility that holy crap, I could be wrong. you know,
Right.
and I don't know. I don't know if you've had those moments in some of your courses or classwork or whatnot, but I recall them very vividly. And some of the most memorable moments have been going into a situation believing that, oh, I got this, and having a professor or some other student and like, nah, look right here. That's where you went wrong. This is off. This is off. That's how you got to here, which is
Mm.
definitely where you do not want to be. And being like, holy crap, I didn't see that. I let me not make the mistake of putting myself in this situation again. And I remember those things very vividly, and it's kind of humbling. So
But before you continue, thank you so much for enjoying the stream and everything. Hope you have a great day as well. But yes, please continue, sir.
no, 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 no. Oi died. Thank you for coming through. I enjoyed. Um, I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I have. I enjoy these conversations with Sigmund Jones. Uh, but yeah, just that humbling experience to recognize that okay, things are not always what they seem. Also, there's no real reason to be ultra cocky about certain
Hmm.
subject matters because there's always the possibility that you could have this or that or this or this wrong, and they
Right.
could be small, tiny things. But when you extrapolate those tiny things out, you often talk about um, the warships that you like in World War II.
Mm.
Um, uh, when I think of ships, I think of navigation and course correction and how important course correction is,
Right.
particularly before the times of having computers to do that type of work for you. But
Hmm.
you would normally have charters that would sit up and constantly check things to make sure that they're course correcting, uh, according to wind and uh, drift and the current drift and the whole nine.
Hmm.
And if you don't, at first, you may be a little bit off. Let that go for 2 or 3 days. You're
Right.
so far off that good grief. Now it's like crap. We got to. We may need to start rationing food.
Right.
so, so
You're
yeah,
right. You'd be
so
like, "Oh snaps, we really dug ourselves a hole here."
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it just those making those tiny course corrections in logical thinking. Um,
Hmm.
I think it's it's necessary to do that, but it's a humbling thing to do that because just like if it was that charter on the slip, if on a ship, if the captain was to go to them and say, "Did you do your course correction?" Well, of course I did my course correction. I don't need to do any course correction. I'm the dog. How many times have I made this trip? And it's like, okay, but then when you get to the point where you're like, "Hey, why are we not at our destination? Where is this
Hmm.
land, man?" Well, I told you to do this. Now you got to deal with these ship full of men and explain to them
Hmm.
why they're on half rations and have to work harder.
Yep. And believe me, mutiny is that's probably one of the worst things that can happen on a ship is mutiny. When you pretty much have the sailors live at stake because of your inadequacies. There's a reason why they say, cannibalism happens a lot out at sea because captains make the wrong decisions and put hundreds, if not thousands, of lives at stake.
Yeah. I didn't know that hard work. They still use the paper charts on the bridge. Interesting.
Hmm. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. In fact, it's something because when I went to Pearl Harbor back in December, I actually got a chance to go inside the USS Missouri. And it's a huge ship, a huge type of battleship and all. And in the navigational room, even though the battleship has gotten like some latest technologies back during the Gulf War and everything, a lot of their navigational system still relies on paper.
Mm, mm. That's um that's interesting, and I understand. I would understand the rationale behind that. Just as to have a backup. It's good to know those things and to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, even to this day, we use the cell phones, for directions and whatnot. But putting the paper maps in front of the kids and having them work it out and say, "Hey, I need you to give directions on this and the trips and so forth." I, it's they think it's fun or and all that, but it does show how to do something in an alternate way before technology,
Right.
came into play, and gives a better understanding of what people did before you.
Hmm.
So yeah, yeah, yeah. Look at that. Hard work says, yeah, they check the set and drift every 15 minutes to make sure that they don't stray off. Well, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. That's
And,
it's
and you know some hard work. I'm pretty sure you probably have probably studied this as far as like naval history and all. During the attack on Pearl Harbor or the events leading up to Pearl Harbor, can you imagine you're trying to do a secret attack on a country and you have to be so secretive that all radio communication is turned off? So there's no Morse code, no radio. You have no choice but to rely on paper navigation to even
mhm.
know you're going to the right direction. So for the country of Japan to pull that off, believe me, that was genius work. You know, you we can debate as far as the outcome of what happened and everything, but as far as their surprise attack leading up to it, genius.
That brings up into mind something else. With the whole flat Earth theory. Um, couldn't a lot of that be cleared up by looking at some of the maps that other nations used during wartime, particularly during
Mm,
World War I and World War II?
you know it. Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, huh. Um, that may be a way to. I may have to look into that because then you would have to hold to the. You would have to defend that position by saying all of the countries that were involved in the war, they were in on the flat Earth secret. It's like, huh, huh?
Yeah, I want to. I definitely want to hear the rationale for that. Uh, so to speak, the enemies of each other or who fighting each other, they was like, "Well, we still got to be secret on these maps and everything. We can't let the average Joe know what our maps look like. Like, huh,
Yeah,
what?
yeah. It's like, yeah, yeah. That's hmm. Eh, th- I think that's where people who I have to steal from Thomas Sowell, where he says, there's trade offs.
Hmm.
You know, and when you make these huge substitutions in whether it is by history or by science or by, um, as some would say, mathematical calculations or changes in accepted knowledges, then you have to make those trade offs across the board.
Yeah,
And that means that stories have to change.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's that's mm,
SKC with the crowd you consistently draw over onto your streams and all. I'm definitely looking forward to a lot of these topics and just sitting back and listening to the rationale that a lot of those folks try to give when you come up with questions like that. Like
y-
I'll be honest, like when you asked me that question back then about could World War II military be able to deploy and everything based off of the flat Earth map, I'll be honest, I was just going based off of okay, if you had a flat Earth and the sun is beaming and everything, there's no rotation and whatnot, then you know, boom, the routes would be different. People will be able to get news within time frames and all. And I mean, these dudes just shot that down like you don't know nothing. It's like, oh, okay, tell me.
You like they're like, call me.
I mean, I was shot down, so I didn't stand a chance. Like, okay, let me just take a back seat because this is an entirely different conversation. I'll be honest, I just did not know. I just something to where, as much as I would like to say, like, okay, you guys are pretty much on the deep end. I still had a part where was like, okay, can you explain this to me? Can you walk me through this process without using your emotions? And unfortunately, I still did not get much rationale from it.
Hmm. No, I have not read the War on the West, but I am looking at the I'm looking at it on Amazon right now.
Mm,
And hold on, let me check one other little thing. Sometimes it doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes new books come out on the Internet Archive, and I can kind of thumb through them
mm.
uh, for free. I like crocodile teeth, um, and so I'll check it out that way. But yeah, I thought that was kind of weird how th- that was shot down very instantly. Um, I'm also interested in this. What was the name of that super technological?
Civilization. Um,
Yeah,
I
seemed
don't
like it
quote me
started with
on
a
it.
T or something.
Yeah, don't quote me on it, but I thought they said it's called Tataria.
Let me see here. Hmm. Yeah, I like I really want to know like where did that come from?
Right.
Yeah, I'm like what? Uh, yeah, yeah. Tartaria, like tartar.
Mm.
Um, IA. Okay. So yeah, I just mm, I I don't mean to be disrespectful or anything. Laughing,
No.
because people have new ideas that you want to take a look at and go from there. But
Right.
um, here's another thing that I found pretty interesting. Books that come from the writers' l- racial or nationalistic um, place of origin
Mm.
that adds unknown insights into said culture. Um,
Mm.
that comes off as very suspicious because it just reminds me of a lot of the super Afrocentric books of old, of how you had these certain people that were saying, "Oh man, Africa used to be the mother of all inventions." Okay, why are you writing this?
Right.
Oh, I forgot. This is You're writing your history of your people and why you should deserve more respect than anybody else, and your culture is superior and such. And it just, I don't know. It just seems so self-serving
Mm.
that it should be automatically um, questioned
Right.
because of motive. It seems to me that if there was, say, if I don't know, and I hate to use the standard of self, but let's say if there was an archaeologist and he came across something that um, could seem self-serving because he is of the particular land of which he found out this or that. It seemed like one of the first things that that person would do would say, in order that this does not become misconstrued, let me contact other archaeologists who are not from here, who have no dog in this race. They have no um they would not be criticized for having some type of alternative motive for trying to uplift this civilization over others and what. Let them take a look at this and then show them what I believe that this is and have it on the record that yes, I wasn't trying to, push some type of off narrative.
Right.
But it's just that I don't know that that one thing about Ireland existing for that long, that really struck in my mind. Like, wow, the Ireland 5,000 year history.
You know what, SKC? I have a coworker. She's a pure blood Irish. In fact, I think she moved to America probably 20 years ago. I think I'm gonna ask her like, is it true that the Irish geology existed at least 5,000 years ago? I think I have an idea of what her reaction will be, but I figure why not just go to the source? Go to somebody who actually is from there, lived there for quite a long time, and you know, see if they can give me some perspective of how truthful that is. Because it's hard to say, okay, she don't know what she's talking about, but she's born and raised from there. She only just recently moved to America.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It just came off as I, shocking.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not. It's like I'm not trying to judge anyone, but it just came off as quite shocking because it's just like, okay, hmm, hmm, um, 5,000 years. Okay, just something really really simple. You take for example, the series that I'm covering with some people when we're watching Three Kingdoms. Okay,
Oh yeah.
Han Empire, circa about 400-year history between 200 to about 230 CE, and um, 230 BCE to 230 AD. So
Mm-hmm.
um, that's just 400 years, and you still have temples and all sorts of just amazing feats of cultural impact. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just one dynasty that was 400 years. Now, when you add in all of the other dynasties, and they don't add up to 5,000 years. And you can go and see all of the stuff that's there. And you mean to tell me that you go to Ireland and it's a relatively small island. It's not close in the size to
Right.
to China or something like that. And if they were to have more history, you would think that that island would be ultra developed. There would be all
Hmm.
sorts of things all over the thing. It would be like an archaeologist's dream.
Right.
Like, so like
No, I hear you, SKC. I'm going to practice just sit back and listening and just observe their talking points, and every now and then just ask little beats and pieces of information here like you always do. Like, hey, can you show me where this information is, and just take and run with it and see where it leads. But I'm to the point now where it's like, yeah, I'm not gonna really dive in head first into these topics or discussions. Just let them explain it to me as best as they can, and then go and verify through my own research whatever there is they're talking about. But yeah,
no, it was an
yeah,
interesting conversation though. I'm glad that it took place. And I think for myself, and then also for others that I come across, and I'm not saying that I have everything perfect. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of dozens upon dozens of holes and things that I put forth, and I hope that people correct
right.
me from time to time when I do put things forth. Speaking of which, when having a conversation with one of those people, they were brought up something about the Dead Sea Scrolls, that some of it contained sections of the Apocrypha, and I didn't know that. And this is from a person that in two different museums. I went and saw the Dead Sea Scrolls with my own two eyes, and
Really?
but I didn't know that they're in the caves as well. Um, were sections of apocryphal writings, and but those, of course, were not put on display with the through its tour throughout various museums
Mm,
over the. But I just so I remember looking it up, and I contacted the person, was like, "Yo, man, I'm glad you did state this, and now I don't agree with this and this, but I do have to give you do right in that here was something that you said that I looked it up, and yeah, you were correct on that. So I appreciate that. So
right.
I don't I don't mind those things, and I look forward to next, because it helps to round out my knowledge and sharpen and polish my talking points and
Yeah.
views a bit more. So yeah, it's I I would love some more thoughts on triangulation, particularly um, your own little deep dive in calculating, simple stuff, the circumference of the Earth, the distance between the moon and the sun. I know some people used it by um, one going, what's that, north of the Tropic of Cancer, and then south of the Tropic of Cancer, and then
Mm-hmm.
um and then using those, adding up those degrees, and then calculating on a day where they were able to view the sun for the third time. I just, all of that stuff, it's really interesting stuff, and I think it's lost knowledge to so many who have been um confronted with a lot of alternative knowledge.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I'll definitely touch up more on those stuff, and have a good night, GM. We'll definitely catch you later on. But yeah,
All right.
I could definitely touch up more of those on future streams. But with that said, good sir, I'm going to go ahead and shut this down and all, because I think today your stream pretty much took up most of the energy and all. So this is just an This is just an after stream of that stream to where we can both kind of collect ourselves to kind of figure out what we went through and everything. So, but
Yeah, I think I'm done until next week. So I mean,
yeah, I
yeah,
don't blame you one bit. I'm just like, you know what, that stream in and of itself. I still need to kind of re-listen to parts of it because I was in and out with meetings and everything. But it's just like, yeah, for SKC to go 9 hours on that, believe me, a lot was talked about.
oh man, yeah, there's a lot of work done in the background. Don't get it twisted. I don't have that time like that, but
Oh no, oh no, I already knew
the
it was like you just used that opportunity to buy some time, whatever you had to do behind the scenes. So yeah,
yeah.
I would have done the same thing.
But
But
anyway, I appreciate it and thank you for having me on. And man, until next time, Sigma.
yes, sir. And thanks for everybody listening in tonight. Don't forget on the other channel, there is the War Room coming up this weekend. So we'll be hopefully finishing up with Adolf Hitler in the 1920s and all, get that out of the way for this month. And then from there, the Black Ronins will be back on later this month. Hopefully, we got some more interviews coming up and everything. But thank you, everybody, for listening in, tuning in tonight. Until next time.
Peace.